I'm removing my seat from my 2006 Nissan Murano to replace the failed rear bracket. This is a common problem with the Murano. It was once welded and that weld failed, so I'm replacing the bracket with a newer upgraded bracket. I've moved the seat all the way to the rear, removed these plastic covers so far, and removed these 14mm bolts, one here and one on the other side. Now I'm going to move the seat all the way forward and remove the back bolts. On the back, covers are similar. You just gotta pry up and this plastic cover comes off, and then remove the 14mm bolts back here. Use a 10mm wrench to loosen the nut on your negative lead for your battery. We do this so we can avoid accidental discharge of the airbag, because that would make a really bad day. So we've done that. Let's move back to the seat. Now I've moved the power seat all the way to the rear position, and I've raised it all the way up so we have easy access to the power cables. I'm going to lean the seat back so I can easily access the cables now and disconnect those. On these connectors, this airbag sensor connector has a little tab. I've got a small flat tip screwdriver I can put in there to release that tab, and then it pulls right out. On the other two connectors, you have to push this tab on this connector and this tab. It's hard to see, but that tab right there to release that connector. To get your seat out, you're going to have to tilt it on its side and then turn it as you come back and out. You don't want to do like I did the first time and end up scratching the inside of your door, so be careful with that. Once you get the seat in the house or wherever you're going to be working on it, this is the option that I've chosen. I have some nice counter height chairs, so it made it a little more level surface for me to work on. You're going to have to pull these the support on the back to pull the flap off the back of the seat so you have access. At this point, if you look in here, you can see where it's broken, and you can see where mine's been welded and then re-broke. It's just too weak of a spot. You have to either remove it and have it welded professionally, or at least, put some better support, or just buy the aftermarket part. In order to show the difference in the bracket, I've tried to position this as well as I can. It's not much light here, but this bracket is one solid piece angling over and welded, so it has much more support than this bent and formed piece that they had in the original Nissan part. In all the videos that I've looked at on YouTube, there's a lot of disassembly to gain access to this bracket. The main problem is down in here, there's a bolt that goes up through the seat frame, and you don't have access to that unless you completely remove the seat cushion. So I believe that's the only way to do it. I've been trying to figure out if you can go another way. In order to gain access to the bottom bolts, and you have to take all these side covers off. This just has a Phillips head screw, and then it pops right off. On this side, the issue you're going to have is the switches for the controls are up against the frame. What you have to do is carefully push down on the back of this, because there's a tab, which is kind of hard to see in this light, down inside here. Try to point to it with my screwdriver. But you have to, if you push down hard, it'll push that plastic off the side of the tab. On the front part of the seat, you have to pry up on these tabs. Right here, and then that pops off the front of the seat. Let's do those one at a time. Of course, this is a little more difficult when I'm holding the camera, but then once that's loose, you have the whole front and side plastic piece loosened. The next step, in order to remove that front side plastic cover, is to remove these connectors so that the wires can pull free. There are tie wrap points that you're going to have to either cut, or if you want to save them, you're going to have to push them from the outside. In order to push them from the outside, you're going to have to remove this side cover, which needs to be removed anyway, so you can go ahead and do that now. The hard part about doing this is trying not to destroy these little hanger points. If you take a needle pliers and squeeze in on the sides of this, you can pull down on the cable and squeeze that in at the same time, and it should pop out. I'm kind of working it out since I'm recording with my other hand, and once that gets partway through the hole, it just pops right down. And you can do the same thing on this one and this one as well. Since I'm trying to avoid taking the entire seat apart, just to see if it's possible with to replace this bracket, I'm going to next take these bolts out. That should give me movement here in this hinge point, and I might possibly be able to remove this bracket without taking the entire thing apart. On this side, you have bolts that come out the side of the frame that will also have to be removed, and then where the drive mechanism is on the other side, there's two more bolts here that you're going to have to remove. And then that whole bracket should be loose, with the exception of the very seat attachment point down here. That'll be the only point that I'll not be able to get to. Okay, for the purposes of my not wanting to remove the entire seat, or making a video so that others can not remove their entire seat cushion, I just like to show that I took all the bolts out of the brackets here, and to the drive mechanism, the bolts that go up on the frame, bottom of the frame here, and that makes everything on the bracket to this point loose. So you could remove it if you get these nuts off the back of this bottom bracket bolt here. If you can get a wrench in, you can push the seat cushion down from the bottom, and be careful, as somebody else has stated in their video, the edges of this are very sharp on both sides. But if you can push this down, you can get a wrench in there and loosen the nut on the back of this bolt on both sides. It might be easier on this side to push it down from the back. What I've done is I had to pull the back of this retaining clip off of this bar here, and then you have a little more access there. My seat has a lumbar support, so I've disconnected this. I just did that so that I didn't put extra strain on that cable when I was trying to reach underneath. But I do believe it's possible to go ahead and take those nuts off, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just to show you, I was able to remove the bracket without removing the top of the seat. Here's the old bracket. If you look, once I got the top bolts loose, I set it on the floor, set the entire seat on the floor, and I was able to lean that main bracket out of the way, and able to push down on that seat cushion from the underside and get my hand underneath there and take those bolts off, or nuts off, I'm sorry. Wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. So if that's another option for you, it might save you some time and also reduce the risk of damaging those clips on the side of your seat cushion. On this side of the bracket here, to get the nut back on the side, and probably best when I was removing it, was to remove this bottom spring. It just hooks up on side there, so you just need to pull up this way and slide it off. It gets it out of your way. You can push down on that seat, and it was a lot easier getting that nut on the back side of it by pushing down on this cushion and reaching in there. It does require a little bit of finger dexterity to get it in there, but it wasn't difficult at all for me, so hopefully nobody else has an issue with that. But yeah, I've already got those nuts on there. I just need to tighten them down and then put all the bolts back in and install the seat. I took the bottom spring off the opposite side as well so that I could make it easier to put my wrench in there. I'm using these ratchet wrenches. It makes it a lot easier to get up in there. I mean, you could use a box end or open end wrench, but of course, you know, easier is better. I stuck that up in there and was able to tighten it down a lot easier. Gave the spring removed. I mean, of course, it just popped off, so that you can take the whole spring out of the way if you needed to. But that makes it a lot easier to get your wrench in there. So here it is, fully reassembled. Well, the bracket anyway is fully reassembled, installed. So now we just need to put the covers back on, wiring harnesses back in place. Make sure you get those back in place, or you're going to pinch your cables and you won't have a power seat anymore. Other than that, we're done. Just need to put it back in the car.